And the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus, seeing the earthquake and the things that had happened, were greatly afraid and said, "Truly this was the Son of God." Matthew 27 verse 54. On that gloomy and crucial day in history, a Roman centurion was present overseeing the crucifixion of Jesus. This soldier was a man hardened by war, accustomed to brutality and death, but something about this specific event was about to change his life forever. His responsibility was to ensure that the execution proceeded without issues. He was used to following rigid orders and maintaining order amidst chaos. However, that day would be extraordinarily different from any other he had experienced. This centurion, whose position required a cold and efficient character, was responsible for 100 soldiers. His rise through the ranks of the Roman army was due to his bravery, intelligence, and ability to handle extreme situations. The role he played required an ability to separate his emotions from his duty. Nevertheless, the events of that day challenged that separation, forcing him to confront his own beliefs and emotions. As he watched Jesus being led to the crucifixion, the centurion could not ignore the dignity with which Jesus faced his imminent death. He was accustomed to seeing men beg for their lives, curse their executioners, or succumb to despair. However, Jesus maintained an impressive calm even while being tortured and ridiculed. This serenity planted a seed of doubt and curiosity in the centurion's heart. The crowd attending the crucifixion was in a frenzy, instigated by the religious leaders who wanted to see Jesus dead. For the centurion, this was just another day of work, another execution to maintain Roman peace. But as events unfolded, he began to realize that there was something unique about this execution, something that defied his understanding and started to stir his soul. It was his responsibility to ensure the execution proceeded smoothly. He commanded 100 soldiers, a man who rose through the ranks due to his bravery and intelligence. However, this day would be unlike any other. The task of overseeing crucifixions was, for him, a grim but necessary routine to maintain the order and authority of the Roman Empire. The crucifixion of Jesus, however, began to stand out from all the others he had witnessed. Jesus was taken to the praetorium where the soldiers gathered around him, mocking and inflicting indescribable pain. They stripped him, put a scarlet robe on him, and twisted together a crown of thorns, placing it on his head. They then gave him a staff symbolizing a scepter and knelt before him in mockery, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him, took the staff, and struck him on the head repeatedly. The centurion, observing all this, could not help but notice Jesus' dignity in the face of such humiliation. Any other man would have begged for mercy or screamed in pain, but Jesus remained silent, enduring the suffering with a tranquility that defied human understanding. This began to move the centurion, who, accustomed to brutality, found himself increasingly intrigued by this figure. When they finally took Jesus to be crucified, the path along the Via Dolorosa was marked by the weight of the cross and the compassion of a divided crowd, some mourning and others mocking. The women of Jerusalem wept for him, and he, in the midst of his own suffering, stopped to console them and their children. The centurion watched all this with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Despite being accustomed to executions, the crucifixion of Jesus was not common. He had executed many before, but Jesus' tranquility and dignity in the face of torture awakened something in him. The execution took place at Golgotha, the place of the skull, a place feared and known for its association with cruel death. The sight of Jesus carrying his cross there, accompanied by an unwilling spectator, Simon of Cyrene, was a scenario that repeated with variations, but Jesus' behavior was unprecedented. When they arrived at the place, they nailed Jesus to the cross and lifted it between two thieves, fulfilling Isaiah's prophecy about being counted among the transgressors. The crowd continued to mock him, and the religious leaders challenged him to come down from the cross if he was really the Son of God. Even the criminals crucified beside him joined in the mockery. But Jesus remained silent, demonstrating an inner strength that confused his executors. The centurion, accustomed to violent resistance and the desperation of the condemned, saw something completely different in Jesus. His prayer to the Father, asking for forgiveness for those who crucified him, resonated deeply with the soldier. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." These words, spoken in the midst of agony, revealed a love and mercy that transcended human understanding. The centurion began to question everything he knew about strength and power. As the hours passed, nature also began to react to Jesus' suffering. Darkness fell over the land at noon, lasting until 3 in the afternoon. This supernatural phenomenon increased the sense of awe and reverence among those present. The centurion, seeing creation react so dramatically, was compelled to recognize that something much greater was happening. Even while being mocked and beaten, Jesus remained serene. The centurion watched, impressed by Jesus' dignity and silence, contrasting with previous executions. In the praetorium, the soldiers stripped Jesus again, dressed him in his clothes, and led him to be crucified. They continued mocking him, but Jesus did not respond with anger or resistance. His silence was disturbing to those accustomed to seeing the desperation of the condemned. The centurion, witnessing this unusual calm, began to feel growing disquiet. He had seen many men beg for their lives from their executioners or give in to despair, but Jesus was different. He endured the pain with a peace that defied understanding. This serenity was not the resignation of a defeated man, but the strength of someone who knew his suffering had a greater purpose. Jesus' prayer, asking for forgiveness for his executioners, resonated in the centurion's mind. Never before had he heard anyone pray for their enemies in such a way. This demonstration of love and compassion contrasted sharply with the brutality of the crucifixion act. The centurion began to wonder who this man was who could love so deeply even in the midst of torture. As Jesus hung on the cross, he continued to show unusual concern for others. He entrusted the care of his mother to the beloved disciple John, showing a familial concern and love that transcended his own pain. These acts of compassion and care in the midst of suffering deeply touched the centurion's heart, who saw in Jesus a humanity that defied his understanding of strength and weakness. During the trial, the high priest challenged Jesus to declare himself the Son of God. Jesus firmly confirmed it, causing a profound impact on the centurion who witnessed everything. "You have said so," Jesus replied, "but I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Matthew 26 verse 64. This declaration was a turning point. The high priest tore his clothes, accusing Jesus of blasphemy, leading to his condemnation. The centurion, present during this exchange, saw the calm and authority with which Jesus responded to the accusations. He did not defend himself or beg for mercy. Instead, he affirmed his divine identity, knowing that it would seal his fate. This behavior strongly contrasted with that of other condemned men, who often resorted to desperation or denial. As Jesus was taken back to the praetorium, the centurion might have reflected on what he had witnessed. Jesus' words might have resonated in his mind. You will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." This vision of power and majesty contrasted with the scene of humiliation and suffering he was witnessing. How could someone in such a situation speak with such certainty and authority? As Jesus faced more humiliations and torture, his response remained constant. He did not curse his executioners or try to escape. Instead, he continued to demonstrate a quiet strength that defied the centurion's understanding. This strength was not physical but spiritual and might have begun to awaken a new perception in the hardened soldier. The crowd, incited by the religious leaders, demanded Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate, yielding to the pressure, handed Jesus over to the soldiers. The centurion again saw Jesus calm in the midst of chaos. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" echoed the crowd's cries as Pilate washed his hands, symbolizing his attempt to absolve himself of the guilt for condemning an innocent man. Matthew 27 verse 24. The centurion was used to the violence and bloodlust of the crowds. He had seen many times the masses demanding the death of the condemned. However, the intensity of the hatred directed at Jesus was unusual. He knew that the religious leaders were behind it, manipulating the crowd to ensure Jesus' execution. That manipulation was not new, but the target of their hatred was what disturbed the centurion. As Jesus carried his cross through the narrow streets of Jerusalem, falling under its weight, the centurion was forced to intervene, ordering Simon of Cyrene to help carry the cross. This simple act of compassion, ordered by the centurion, showed that even in his role as executor, he was not insensitive to human suffering. He saw in Jesus a man who did not deserve that fate. As the procession advanced, the crowd continued mocking and insulting Jesus. However, Jesus did not return the hatred. He remained silent, enduring everything with a dignity that defied expectations. This behavior contrasted with the typical reaction of other condemned men, who frequently responded to violence with violence or despair. While Jesus was nailed to the cross, he did not express hatred or anger. Instead, he prayed for those who crucified him, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23 verse 34. This prayer, uttered in the midst of excruciating pain, had a profound impact on the centurion. He had never seen someone pray for their executioners, and these words might have begun to touch his heart in a way that nothing else had before. The crowd continued mocking Jesus, challenging him to come down from the cross if he was indeed the Son of God. The centurion observed all this, but his perspective was beginning to change. He saw not only a condemned man but someone who embodied a love and strength that defied human understanding. This silent testimony began to awaken something within him, a curiosity and respect for the one they called the King of the Jews. As the hours passed, darkness fell over the land, and Jesus' suffering reached its climax. The centurion saw Jesus' anguish but also his resolve. When Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27 verse 46. The centurion witnessed a man deeply connected to his faith, even in his moment of greatest suffering. This cry, a quotation from Psalm 22, revealed a profound trust in God despite the apparent abandonment. It was a moment that showed Jesus' humanity and divinity, a moment that might have deeply impacted the centurion, causing him to reflect on the nature of this man he was crucifying. The climax of the event came when Jesus, with a loud cry, gave up his spirit. At that very moment, the earth shook, rocks split, and the temple veil was torn in two. This series of supernatural events left an indelible mark on the centurion. He had witnessed many deaths, but never had he seen the earth respond in such a dramatic way. The darkness, the earthquake, and the tearing of the temple veil were clear signs that this was no ordinary execution. In the midst of this turmoil, the centurion felt a profound change within himself. The man who had begun the day as an executor was now a witness to something divine. The words escaped his lips almost involuntarily. Truly this was the Son of God. Matthew 27 verse 54. This confession, born from an encounter with the divine in the midst of human brutality, marked a turning point in his life. The hardened soldier who had seen and inflicted much pain was now confessing the divinity of the man he had crucified. This moment of recognition and transformation highlighted the profound impact Jesus had on those around him, even in his final moments. The centurion's journey from skepticism to faith is a testament to the power of Jesus' love and sacrifice. This declaration was not just an acknowledgement of Jesus' innocence, but a recognition of his divine identity. The centurion, a Roman soldier, and a representative of the empire that executed Jesus, was confessing that this man was truly the Son of God. This moment of realization and confession marked a profound change in the centurion's life, highlighting the transformative power of Jesus' sacrifice and love. Through the eyes of this Roman centurion, we witness a remarkable transformation. From a soldier carrying out an execution to a man profoundly moved by the events he witnessed, his journey reflects the power of Jesus' sacrifice to touch even the hardest of hearts. His declaration, "Truly this was the Son of God," remains a powerful testament to the divine nature of Jesus and the impact of his love and sacrifice on all who encounter it.